Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk came out a few years ago. It's huge, around 615 pages. I read it when it first released, but back then I didn't feel ready to make an episode about it. Now I finally understand the angle I want to share with you. And yeah, it might sound strange because Elon is the richest guy alive and constantly in the news. Politics, tweets, controversies, always something new. But all that noise hides something important. Elon has a set of timeless, powerful principles for building companies, inventing technology, and shaping the world. So here's what I did. I've spent at least 60 hours going through the book again and again. The book is arranged chronologically, almost like decades of news clippings assembled together rather than a typical biography. And that actually helps us, because it makes it easy to see the patterns Elon kept repeating for 30 years and across 7 different companies. There's a famous quote attributed to Michelangelo, maybe true, maybe not, where he was asked how he created the statue of David. He said, "I just removed everything that wasn't David." That's basically what I did. I cut down 40 pages of notes into the core of how Elon operates. I want to focus on the principles he returns to over and over again, things that shaped his companies and this unusual, one-of-a-kind career. Honestly, I don't think there's anyone else like him, ever. I'm going to walk through these ideas in chronological order so you can watch them appear, reappear, evolve, and sharpen over time. By the end, you'll understand exactly how Elon thinks. And then we can sit with these concepts, write them down, and decide which ones can help in our own work. After doing this project for years, studying the greatest founders week after week, I've noticed something strange. People who lived in different centuries, worked in different industries, and never knew each other somehow arrive at almost the same conclusions about building themselves and their companies. It's wild. Let's start with Elon in college, right before founding Zip2. One early recurring theme, he loved strategy games, board games, video games, whatever. At university, he became obsessed with a classic game called Diplomacy. The book says he would disappear into these games for hours. They helped him unwind, manage stress, and sharpen his tactical thinking. He once told a friend, "I am wired for war." That line follows him for decades. During one internship, the book mentions that Elon hated working for other people. He didn't like deferring to authority and wasn't built to assume someone else knew more. That trait stays with him forever. When Zip2 started, one of Elon's early mantras shows up: be hardcore. Work constantly. They literally slept in the office and showered at the YMCA. Another principle, this one is my interpretation, is that Elon understands the power of showmanship. One dramatic moment can drive a whole narrative. In the Zip2 office, they put a tiny computer inside a huge server frame just to impress visitors. Every time investors came in, we showed them that tower, he said. It made them think we were doing serious stuff. He repeats this kind of theatrical demonstration throughout his career. From the start, Elon was a demanding manager. Work-life balance? He thought it weakened the mission. He pushed himself non-stop and expected others to do the same. His only real breaks were intense bursts of gaming. He also believed getting too friendly with co-workers got in the way of execution. He often said things like, "It's not your job to make people on your team love you. That's counterproductive." He keeps this stance decades later. Another thing, Elon hated middlemen. He wanted direct control and direct consumer interaction. He believed real product builders should sell straight to customers. Less than 4 years after starting Zip2, he and his brother sold it to Compaq for $307 million, and Elon walked away with $22 million at age 27. But the money wasn't the point. In interviews back then, he kept saying that building companies is what mattered. "I could buy an island," he said, "but I'd rather build another company." One of my notes after rereading the book: Elon makes money only to put it back into another company. He repeats this pattern for decades. Even after selling Tesla stock, he poured huge amounts into Twitter because he hates idle cash. Money is just fuel for solving problems. Another theme: his belief is contagious. People in the book mention this over and over. When Elon believes something, even if it sounds impossible, you find yourself believing it too. His management style never changes. He stays obsessive. "I am by nature obsessive-compulsive," Elon said. "What matters to me is winning, and not in a small way." When he started his next company, he used the same habits: insane deadlines, intense pressure, sleeping at the office. Even in leisure, he's intense. People describe him sweating during video games. One of the biggest surprises reading the book is Elon's obsession with simplification. He constantly tells teams to delete features, cut steps, and reduce complexity. Half the book feels like him saying, "Simplify." He loved shrinking user interfaces: fewer steps, fewer clicks. He also wasn't interested in niche products. During PayPal, his ambition jumped. He wanted to transform entire industries, not build small tools. By around page 80, we see a principle he repeats maybe 20 to 30 times. He restructures companies so engineering and design work closely together. No silos. He did this at PayPal, Tesla, SpaceX, and Twitter. He believed separating design and engineering caused dysfunction. Designers needed to feel engineering pain immediately, and engineers should lead. Another recurring idea: if you know every detail of your business, you can solve anything. At PayPal, Max Levchin said Elon would sometimes suddenly know more about a technical piece than the specialist working on it. Those bursts of sharpness pushed teams harder. He also believed the founder should be the company's public face. Elon always thought he was the best spokesperson, and he kept doing it across all companies. Descriptions from his PayPal era still apply today: relentless, abrasive, risk-loving. He liked raising the stakes and removing fallback options, burning the boats. He wanted the team all in with no way out. There's a kind of certainty Elon has that makes him shove all his chips into the middle of the table. The PayPal era shows it clearly. When he got pushed out as CEO, he didn't blow up relationships or burn everything down. That restraint ends up saving SpaceX almost 10 years later. But the important signal here is his level of self-belief. His confidence borders on superhuman. Decades later, talking to Walter Isaacson, he says, "If I had stayed, PayPal would be $1 trillion company." And he really means it. Right after PayPal, he has to decide what comes next, and this is where his ambition goes vertical. He decides he's starting a rocket company. So he heads to the public library in Palo Alto and starts devouring books on rocket engineering. He calls experts, asks to borrow old engine manuals, and just digs and digs. People who worked with him kept saying the same thing: Elon reads everything. This is a pattern you see with many legendary founders. They drain entire shelves. Edison, Churchill, Michael Dell, Edwin Land. These people inhaled everything related to their obsession. One of my favorite examples: Edwin Land goes to Harvard, becomes obsessed with light and optics, and reads every single book on those topics in the school's library. When he finishes, he realizes, "I've learned everything that's here." So he leaves Harvard, moves to New York, and does the same thing at the public library. That's the mindset: empty the shelf. So between PayPal and SpaceX, someone asks Elon what he's planning. And he answers casually, "I'm going to colonize Mars." My mission is to make humans a multiplanetary species. Someone else hearing this wonders how that's supposed to be a business. But the person talking to him clarifies. Elon doesn't start with a business idea. He starts with a mission. The economics come later. This repeats constantly throughout the book. And then there's one of the most important observations in the entire biography. Pause for a second and realize how wild it was for a 30-year-old founder who had just been fired from 2 tech companies to decide he was going to build rockets to reach Mars. That's not normal ambition. That's a different species of ambition. Another core idea shows up here too. The belief that technological progress isn't automatic. It doesn't just drift forward on its own. Humans make technology. And if we don't push, things don't advance. Sometimes they even regress. Elon says people are wrong when they think tech improves by default. It only improves if a lot of people push very hard. This ties directly to one of his most used principles. He frames what he's doing as something with epic-level importance. A mission bigger than the moment. One of his superpowers is his ability to present his vision as something almost cosmic, like a mission handed down from above. He understands the power of inspiration. He believes people need something grand to aim at. There's a great example. A supplier quoted $120,000 for a part. Elon said it was basically the complexity of a garage door opener. He told an engineer to make it. The engineer made it for $5,000. That's the idiot index in action. This ties directly into another principle he repeats endlessly. Question every requirement. This becomes step 1 of what later gets called the algorithm, a 5-step checklist used for building products. Whenever an engineer referenced a requirement, Elon asked, "Who made this requirement?" And answers like the military or legal weren't acceptable. Elon keeps repeating one line to his teams. A maniacal sense of urgency is how we operate. And he means it literally. Here's a perfect example. He's in a meeting, here's a schedule estimate, and snaps. How can this take so long? This is stupid. Cut it in half. When Mueller pushed back, saying they had already cut the timeline in half, Elon stared at him coldly and told him to stay after everyone left. Then he asked if Mueller still wanted to run engines. When Mueller said yes, Elon told him, "Then when I ask for something, you deliver." Another trait that ties everything together: near superhuman determination. The man just does not bend. Even people who already made fortunes backing him underestimated that trait. When Elon pitched Tesla to Sequoia's Michael Moritz, the same firm that made money off PayPal, Moritz refused. "We're not competing with Toyota," he said. "That's impossible." Years later, Moritz admitted he misjudged Elon's level of drive. Another principle woven throughout the book: showmanship is salesmanship. Elon loves publicity. He believes a new product needs a moment. The people who end up achieving the most are usually the same ones who rack up the biggest pile of failures. And Elon fits that formula perfectly. A huge part of why he succeeds and stumbles so much is tied to one missing trait: patience. He just doesn't have it. When he talks about those first SpaceX rocket attempts on the remote island of Kwajalein, he later admits the move was a mistake. He should have waited for Vandenberg to open up. But waiting wasn't something he was built for. His own summary was blunt. Sometimes you shoot yourself in the foot. And if you wanted to pick the single worst place to improve your chances of success, It would be a hard-to-reach tropical island. Because the place was so remote, even basic logistics turned into wild adventures. One example, they needed specific capacitors that happened to be sitting in some electronics store in Minnesota. But it's easy to say those things. The question is whether you're willing to endure what comes with it. One of the strongest lines in entrepreneurship is that excellence is the capacity to take pain. Elon has an almost bottomless reservoir for pain. In 2008, when both Tesla and SpaceX were on the brink of collapse, his second wife, Tallulah Riley, described him having night terrors, thrashing around, muttering to himself, shouting, waking up to vomit from stress. She watched him break down and rebuild himself night after night. He said that year felt like having to pull a rabbit out of a hat, and then being told to do it again, and again, and again. One thing he did earlier in his career turned out to be surprisingly important. NASA sourced $1,500 latches. A SpaceX engineer modified a bathroom stall latch that cost $30. Same function. When an engineer said cooling systems for the Falcon 9 would cost $3 million, Elon shouted across the room asking Gwen Shotwell what a home AC unit costs. About $6,000, she said. So they bought commercial AC units and modified them to sit atop the rocket. Then he uses his urgency principle again. Elon's line about "do it again" hits harder when you realize how literal it was. He wasn't talking about motivational posters. He meant actually forcing himself to endure the same nightmare conditions over and over. And the wild part is, he never really explains why he can keep doing it. Even he admits it's strange. But here's what matters. When the PayPal coup pushed him out, he didn't burn the bridge. He didn't go nuclear on the people who took the company from him. He stayed on speaking terms. He stayed civil. And years later, that move saved SpaceX. Peter Thiel, one of the very people who helped remove Elon, ended up wiring in $20 million when SpaceX was about to flatline. Elon likes to joke that after being stabbed like Caesar, he could have told all of them to get lost. But if he had done that, Founders Fund wouldn't have stepped in during 2008, and SpaceX would have ended right there. Tesla got its miracle the same way, by combining two of Elon's operating laws: a maniacal sense of urgency and the belief that a dramatic demonstration beats any pitch deck ever created. Daimler had hinted they were exploring an electric car and asked Tesla to show them something for their upcoming visit. That triggered a full scramble. Tesla bought a tiny smart car, ripped it apart, shoved a roadster motor and battery pack inside it, and reassembled it into a functioning electric prototype. When the Daimler team showed up, they expected slides. Elon asked if they wanted to take the car for a spin instead. They did, and the moment the car blasted from 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds, they realized Tesla wasn't bluffing. After the drive, Elon asked for an investment. Daimler agreed to put $50 million into Tesla. Later, he said plainly, without that money, Tesla would have died. This goes back to one of his most repeated beliefs: showmanship is salesmanship. Jobs said storytellers are the most powerful people in the world. Don Valentine said money follows stories, not spreadsheets. Elon lives that. A live, physical demo can bend reality and change the future of the company. Then comes another principle he returns to constantly. If a design can't be manufactured at scale, the design itself is wrong. He says real design isn't surface decoration. It's the inner soul of a product expressed through engineering and then through looks. Steve Jobs had almost the exact same philosophy. And Elon always tries to inject some personality, some sense of play into his products. A small example: Early Model S prototypes had door handles that lay flat and silent, but when the driver approached, they lit up and extended, almost like the car giving a cheerful handshake. Some people told him a normal handle would work just fine. Elon immediately locked on to the fun version. It was surprising, delightful, and delight is contagious. When people get surprised in a positive way, they talk, and that helps a company more than any advertisement. Then you see him blend a few more of his favorite principles: relentless cost-cutting, questioning every requirement, and refusing to accept the world as fixed. When he asked why a pair of cranes for rocket work would cost $2 million, the team showed him a stack of Air Force safety regulations. Most of them were outdated. So SpaceX went to the Air Force directly, argued the case, and got the rules revised. The cranes ended up costing $300,000. He does this constantly, comparing aerospace prices to everyday industries. When NASA used $1,500 latches, a SpaceX engineer modified a bathroom stall latch for $30. When an engineer said the Falcon 9's cooling system would cost $3 million, Elon yelled across the floor asking Gwen Shotwell what a home AC costs. $6,000. So they bought commercial AC units and adapted them for the rocket. And the urgency principle only gets louder. The day before a launch, inspectors found cracks in the second stage engine skirt. NASA assumed a delay of weeks. Elon asked, why not just cut off the cracked section entirely? A big pair of shears, a clean edge, done. They trimmed the skirt and launched the next day. Decision time, under an hour. Then there's the trio that sits deep in his worldview: anti-outsourcing, total control, and daily iteration. American companies saved money by moving their factories overseas, but they lost touch with the actual making of their products, and that meant they improved slower. Elon refused to give that up. He wanted tight control. He believed designing the factory, the machine that builds the machine, was as important as designing the final product. Elon threw himself into manufacturing the same way he threw himself into rockets. Head first, obsessive, and unwilling to accept anything halfway done. He spent more time walking the factory floor than hanging around the design studio. His reasoning was blunt. Designing the car was nothing compared to the mental strain of designing the factory that makes the car. And because he believed people should feel the consequences of their work immediately, he moved the engineers' cubicles right up against the assembly lines so they'd hear every alarm, complaint, and slowdown caused by a design decision. No one was allowed to hide in a quiet corner. He dragged them up and down the line with him, forcing direct contact with reality. The first Model S vehicles off the line made him furious. He thought the early quality was unacceptable, so he fired 3 production quality chiefs in rapid succession. His focus was always root cause. If a finished car had issues, he didn't blame the line workers. He went all the way back to the design itself. What in the blueprint forced the line to fail? If Elon ever got a tattoo, it would probably just say "hardcore" in giant letters. He used that word constantly. When the Model S ramp began, he sent employees a company-wide message titled "Ultra Hardcore," warning them to prepare for an intensity level most had never seen. Disrupting an industry wasn't for the faint-hearted. All of his core traits, the obsession with simplifying, deleting, reframing problems, reducing costs, and aiming for epic-scale impact, show up in nearly every moment of the story. It's like watching someone play the same chords through every company, but in different songs. One example: he was fixated on shedding every gram of unnecessary weight from rockets because weight reduction multiplies through the whole system. Remove mass, you need less fuel. Use less fuel, you reduce total lift requirements. A tiny deletion in one place echoes everywhere else. So he marched through SpaceX's lines, station by station, staring silently, then asking which parts could be trimmed, removed, or simplified. And hovering over everything was his mantra. Building a fully reusable rocket is the difference between Earth being our only home or becoming a multi-planet civilization. The bigger picture here is that greatness comes from relentless repetition of a small set of principles over decades. Elon pushed everyone to find tiny gains in efficiency, even when engineers argued the changes would cause headaches with valves or seals. His response was always the same. There's no first principles reason this can't work. It's hard, sure, but difficulty isn't an excuse. Elon told Davis to start figuring out how to build tunnels fast and cheap, immediately. Then he added, "I'll call you back in 3 hours." That's his whole energy. Start now, move now, don't wait for ideal moments. When he called again, Davis already had a few ideas using a standard tunneling machine to carve a simple 40-foot wide circular hole without needing concrete reinforcement. Elon asked the price. $5 million, Davis said. Elon replied, "Buy 2. Have them ready when I get back." New company or not, it was still the same Elon. He went straight to where the real work was happening and drilled his algorithm into everyone. Move insanely fast, delete unnecessary steps, simplify everything, compare options across industries. He checked progress constantly, pushing. How do we go faster? What's slowing us? Every time, the lesson returned to deleting and simplifying. For example, they were digging a vertical shaft to lower the machine into the ground. Elon pointed out, "The gopher in my yard doesn't do that." So they redesigned the tunneling machine to be aimed downward and start digging right from the surface. The pace was brutal. His schedule consumed him. Sometimes he would drift into deep thought even in the middle of a conversation. Other times he had to isolate himself to think clearly. He would say, "I need to lie down, turn off the lights. I need quiet." It reminded me of Jim Simons from Renaissance Technologies, who solved problems by lying flat in total darkness for long stretches with no sensory input. Elon used a similar method, shutting off sight and sound to let ideas surface. There are stories of him sitting alone, staring at a wall for an entire night. Another major idea: make data visible, and then run to the problem. He installed screens showing each station on the line, green for good, red for stuck. Elon would walk the line looking for red lights. "Walk to the red," he repeated. If a part was missing, he'd find the person responsible. If a sensor kept tripping, he'd demand calibration. If a rule forced some pointless inspection, he'd question the rule itself. He'd ask why there were 4 bolts instead of 2. If engineers resisted, he told them to test it and see if it failed. He moved down the line like a storm. He also said you had to be decisive or die. He made 100 decisions a day on the floor. He expected 20% to be wrong. They'd fix those later. But indecision would kill the company faster than a bad choice. Sometimes he turned it into a game. He walked with a can of orange spray paint. "Go or stay?" he asked his engineering VP. If they said go, he marked the robot with an orange X, and the team ripped it out. He publicly took the blame for the automation disaster, tweeting, "Excessive automation at Tesla was a mistake. My mistake. Humans are underrated." Even after all this, they still weren't at 5,000 cars a week. He looked everywhere for ideas. Military history, sci-fi, nature, toys, anything. He remembered how in World War II, when bomber production needed to be sped up, new lines were built right in parking lots. So he told Tesla to build a massive tent outside. 3 weeks later, cars were rolling out of that tent. His quote on this moment nails his energy. If conventional thinking makes your mission impossible, then unconventional thinking becomes mandatory. A few weeks later, Tesla finally hit 5,000 cars per week. Which brings us to the most important part, the algorithm. In every meeting, there was a real chance he'd begin reciting it like a chant. Executives would mouth the words along with him. Repetition wasn't an accident. He believed leaders should repeat their principles until the entire culture breeds them automatically. He even said, "I became a broken record." I think it helps to say it to an annoyingly repetitive degree. His algorithm had 5 rules. Rule number 1: question every requirement. Every requirement should have the name of the person who made it. Elon's algorithm starts with something that sounds simple, but almost nobody does. You question every requirement. And you don't accept answers like, legal said this, or safety department said that. He wants the name of the actual human who created the rule. Only then can you push back. And the funny thing? The most dangerous requirements usually come from the smartest people, because nobody wants to challenge them. Elon tells his teams to question those the hardest, even if the requirement originally came from him. After that, make the requirement less dumb. Then he goes to the next step, which is to delete anything you can. Rip steps out. Tear out parts of the process. You'll probably have to add some of them back later, and that's fine. In fact, he says, if you don't add at least 10% back, you didn't delete enough. Only after deleting does he move to simplifying and organizing. Most teams mess this up. They try optimizing something that shouldn't exist in the first place. Once the process actually makes sense, then you accelerate. Speed comes after clarity. Elon admits he wasted months speeding up processes in the Tesla factories that he later realized should have been thrown in the trash. Automation is always last. Tesla's early failure came from doing automation first, letting robots take over systems that were fundamentally flawed. They should have waited until the requirements were questioned, the unnecessary steps fetal, and the bugs exposed. Around this algorithm, he has a handful of side rules that he repeats constantly. Managers must have real hands-on experience. Software leaders must code. Solar roof managers must install actual roofs. Otherwise, you're like a general who can't use a sword. He warns that camaraderie is dangerous. People become too polite to call out problems. It's okay to be wrong, he says, but don't be confident and wrong. Never ask anyone to do something you're unwilling to do yourself. And when there are problems, don't let your managers filter everything. Go straight to the people doing the real work. When hiring, he looks for attitude first. Skills can be taught. Mindset can't. And he pushes a maniacal sense of urgency because, to him, the only rules that truly matter are the laws of physics. Everything else is negotiable. So it's no surprise that during the 2018 production hell, a lot of senior executives bailed. Elon doesn't care. He likes fresh blood. What he fears more are the people who phone in rich, meaning long-time employees who stop pushing because they've already earned enough comfort in life. He wants people who still feel the stakes. He also has this strange tunnel vision when he's focused. He'll be deep in thought, so locked in that he doesn't register anything happening around him. The book repeats this again and again. Elon can block out the entire world if he's locked on a problem. And his guiding belief? Laws can be changed. Requirements can be changed. The world is not fixed. Tesla wanted to build in China without a joint venture, something the Chinese government never allowed any automaker to do. Instead of accepting it, Elon pushed. They lobbied for months until China changed a law that had been untouched for 30 years. To him, that's just an extension of questioning requirements. When things move too slow, he reacts instantly. One Sunday night, with zero warning, he flew to Seattle and fired the entire top Starlink team. He brought senior rocket engineers who barely knew anything about satellites, but they knew how to tear things down to first principles. They threw out the old designs and rebuilt everything from physics upward. He constantly tries to delete more, simplify more, find the limit of minimalism. When SpaceX was working with welders who built steel water towers, Elon asked how thin the rocket walls could safely be. The workers said 4.8 millimeters. Elon immediately asked about 4.0 millimeters. They told him that would make them nervous. Good, he said, let's try 4. And it worked. That mindset repeats everywhere. Stop assuming your limits are real. Stop waiting for perfect tools. Start with whatever is in front of you and move. At one point, the team said they couldn't build a dome by dawn because they didn't have the right calibration equipment. Elon told them to slice the end off a rocket barrel and use that as the fitting tool. He stayed awake with them through the night. They didn't finish by dawn, but they did by 9 a.m. He spends insane amounts of time in silent thought. Grimes described waking up multiple times in the night and seeing him sitting on the edge of the bed, perfectly still, staring forward like a thinking statue. Another example. He was playing with a toy Model S and noticed the whole underside of the toy was a single die-cast piece. He asked his engineers why Tesla couldn't build the real car the same way. They said no machine existed that could cast something that big. Elon told them to go find someone who would build one. 5 out of 6 companies said no. 1 said yes. That machine is now one of Tesla's biggest breakthroughs. He studies toys, Legos, robots, anything that can spark simplicity. He loves how Lego pieces have identical precision within 10 microns. He says precision isn't expensive, it's about caring enough to demand it. And still, his core traits show up: urgency, hardcore work ethic, frontline leadership. If there's a problem, he moves into the factory. At Cape Canaveral, he was furious to find only 2 out of 783 employees working late at night. He moved into the hangar and worked non-stop. He still interviews engineers personally. He picks based on attitude, the willingness to grind. When someone's time is up, he doesn't sugarcoat it. One engineer who worked with him for 18 years got an email that said basically, "You did great work, but everyone's time comes. Yours is now." Elon compares rockets to airplanes. Land, refuel, take off again. No fuss. And he repeats endlessly that the best part is no part. Delete, delete, delete. He warns managers not to be friends with their teams. If you're popular, he says, you're probably not doing the hard thing. And he drills technical knowledge ruthlessly. If you don't know the cost of a part or the idiot index, he'll consider your resignation on the spot. Not because he hates you, because physics doesn't care about your feelings, and neither do deadlines. He demands frontline leadership. If you manage solar roofs but haven't installed one yourself, he'll curse you out. He wants leaders on the battlefield, not behind glass. Even in personal life, he struggles. Grimes wrote a song basically saying he'll always love the mission more than he loves anyone. He's not wired for calm relationships. He admits it. And he's very clear about what matters most. He says electric cars were inevitable, with or without him. But a multiplanetary civilization? That wasn't inevitable. That's why SpaceX is his true mission. And his operating principle stays the same. If we are slow, we are dead. Build fast, fail fast, fix fast. Complexity is the enemy. Movement exposes truth. You are responsible for production. You can't hand it off and wash your hands. If the design is expensive to make, you change the design. Move your desks to the assembly line. Let the people who make the product collar the designers and engineers and ask, why did you build it like this? If your hand is on a hot stove, you pull it off immediately. If someone else's hand is on the stove, it takes longer. That's why a maniacal sense of urgency is the operating principle. When they were working on an engine design, Elon sent a blistering email. We are on a deletion rampage. Nothing is sacred. Any questionable tubes, manifolds, or sensors will be deleted tonight. Go ultra-hardcore on deletion and simplification. He's brutally difficult, but the payoff is obvious. You learn more in a minute from someone like him than anywhere else. It's worth some hardship to spend time with a person who teaches that much. He says he didn't learn company building from business school or mentors. He read biographies of great builders: Franklin, Ford, Tesla, and the rest. That habit explains why he's obsessed with simplifying. Delete, delete, delete. Simplify, simplify, simplify. Complexity kills scale. When he paused over a Neuralink device, he looked at the tangle of wires and connections and declared it too complex. There's no physics stopping all that functionality from living in one elegant package. No router, no exposed wires. When engineers argued for the router, his face went stone, and he repeated the mantra: delete, delete, delete. Elon picks ideas up from everywhere. He's obsessed with a mobile strategy game called Polytopia, and he treats it like a training ground for CEOs. The lessons are blunt. Empathy is not an asset in this game. Treat life like turns in a board game. Don't fear losing. You'll learn from it. Set strategy proactively. Optimize every move. And double down when you see advantage. These rules explain his default state. Extended calm is unnerving. He wants things to be interesting and edgy. He wants work that is useful and inspiring for civilization. When timelines look wrong, he explodes. He ordered nightly Starship meetings, 7 days a week, running the algorithm. Question every requirement, delete and simplify until the design is unfucked. How soon can we get the booster on the pad? 10 days, someone said. Too long, he said. This is about human destiny. You can't do it 9 to 5. He insists on being a frontline general. If the general's on the battlefield, the troops fight harder. He invokes Napoleon. Wherever he stood, his armies performed best. He believes bad news should be shouted often. Good news whispered once. He reuses ideas everywhere. Toys that sparked the Model S underbody design later guided casting decisions. Legos taught him about precision manufacturing. The same lessons that made cars better he applies to robots. He frames these projects as epical. Robots and autonomous taxis aren't just products. They're civilization-changing tech we must force into being. Technology isn't inevitable. It progresses only when people push, sweat, and force it forward. When progress slogs, he moves hard. He once flew to Seattle on a Sunday and cleared a top teen, bringing senior rocket engineers to rebuild the satellite effort from first principles. He made them question every requirement down to physics, throw out the old designs, and start fresh. He always wants to find the limit. How thin can a tank wall be? Workers said 4.8 millimeters. He asked about 4. They were nervous. He said try it. It worked. Find the limit and delete everything that doesn't need to exist. He lives by start with what's in front of you. When the team complained they couldn't build a dome by dawn because they lacked a calibration tool, he told them to slice off a rocket barrel and use that as a jig. He worked through the night with 4 engineers and welders until it was done at 9 a.m. Stop inventing imaginary limits. Use what you have and move. He also spends huge amounts of time in silence, thinking. There are scenes of him sitting still on the edge of the bed, staring forward until dawn. That quiet, focused thinking is part of how he breaks hard problems apart. When he sees a toy Model S with a one-piece die-cast underbody, he asks why a real car can't be built the same way. Engineers said no machine could cast that size. He told them to find one. 5 companies said no. 1 agreed and built the world's largest casting press. He studies toys, robots, and Legos for design lessons because toys must be precise, cheap, and flawless by Christmas or kids cry. Precision, he says, isn't expensive. It's about caring. He hates complacency. At Cape Canaveral, he found only 2 people working at night, among hundreds on the payroll, and moved into the hangar to lead a round-the-clock campaign. He still interviews engineers himself and hires attitude over resume. Attitude determines endurance. He's ruthless about phoning in rich. Long-tenured folks who slow down because they're financially comfortable are pushed out. He believes camaraderie blunts judgment. If you're popular with the engineers, you might not be doing your job right. He drills people on the idiot index. Know which parts are idiotic to build and why. If you don't know the worst and best parts, he'll consider your resignation. Physics doesn't care about feelings. It cares about whether the rocket works. He makes leaders do the work. If you manage solar roofs but never climbed one, he'll make you install one yourself. That way you see the design pain firsthand. He enforces daily accountability. Meet every 24 hours on critical problems until fixed. When he bought Twitter, he did the same transplant trick. Parachute engineers from Tesla and SpaceX in to start remolding culture and product. He hates psychological safety as a corporate aim. He sees it as the enemy of urgency. His preferred word is hardcore. Discomfort and difficult work are weapons against complacency. Finally, and maybe most importantly, he ranks mission importance. Mass-market electric cars were inevitable. Someone would have done them. Becoming a spacefaring civilization was not inevitable. That's why SpaceX matters most. Invest in the things that wouldn't happen without you. Remember the central line to keep. Both his successes and failures are epic. He pushes, he breaks things, he learns, and he applies those lessons over and over. That is how he builds. This is how ULoan works.